Joining us now on the Pick Four Pros podcast, we've got Winoa State defensive back Jamon Williams in the house. You can follow him on Twitter at jwill_527. He's going to be talking to us about his college experience and prep for the 2025 draft. Jamon, how's it going? Thanks so much for hopping on, and thanks so much for doing this on such short notice.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for having me. And I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
I am doing well, kind of taking it easy on this Sunday. I know yesterday when we were kind of trying to get this thing together, you weren't taking it easy because you were training earlier in the morning, right? So
Yeah.
we're going to get into so many different things here, but let's start with your college career. I mean, you are a local Chicago area guy from the south suburbs, but coming out of high school, what made Winoa State such a great fit for you?
Here's a fact. So one of my teammates, he went to Winoa State, and also my head coach from high school went to Winoa State. So I had a lot of connections with Winoa State, and also my dean, who is the brother of my coach during the time, and I had a lot of connections with him. So Winoa State became my first offer after high school when I was getting the looks and stuff. So Winoa State became my first offer, and then I started just committed to the school.
Did you do a lot of homework on Winoa State, or was it just more so because you had people around you, like your head coach, that went there that you just relied on word of mouth?
So when I was a junior in high school, we went to the Winoa State summer camp, and then this is when I started figuring out a lot of research on what is Winoa State, how is the school is and where is it at, this and that. And I did a lot of research. Every year when I was in high school, we always go to Winoa State summer camps and stayed in the dorms for 2-3 days. And I would always ask Coach, how was Winona, and how is the experiments that he had. And he always tell me, oh, Winona is a fun place, and you could So that's basically.
That definitely makes sense. And again, for our listeners that aren't familiar, one of the big things that a lot of varsity programs in the state of Illinois do, because I coach in the state of Illinois as well, is they will go ahead for a couple days. They'll take the sophomore and varsity team to a out-of-state university, just to get the team some additional reps. It's a really cool competition thing, but also team bonding thing. But let's talk your daily routine, man. I mean, what is it like? Where are you training? How much are you lifting each week? What's the daily nutrition like? Take us inside all that as you kind of get ready for the next step here.
Good question. So every day I will always try to be active as a guy. So I'm not in school no more since I already graduated, and I'm trying to stay more proactive as the days getting myself ready for the draft. So I will always go lift, trying to get a little lift in, doing my bench, my squats, my deadlifts. And then recently, I just posted on my Instagram yesterday that I'm starting to get on the field more, since now it's starting to be more clear outside. The degrees is starting to increase, and that's really what my routine is. I always just go work out, get a little lift in, train with my trainers. I'll always train at least 3 to 4 days a week, and I will usually sometimes Sundays and Tuesdays are my recovery days when I had an intense workout. So that's really much my daily routine is I like to work out at least 3-4 times a day, and have some rest days for myself after intensive workouts.
And what's the diet like? I mean, do you have your own nutrition plan, or are you following something that your trainers gave you?
I actually have my own. So I like to eat a lot of protein. I'm more of a chicken, steak, pork, beef guy, and I've been more making a rice bowl, regular rice bowls I get from Chipotle. I always eat a little rice bowl with steak, chicken, rice, beans, and lettuce. And I will always just drinks some healthy drinks, my energy drinks. Eat breakfast. I'm more in a protein type guy. So my diet is more of I want to increase my calories and just eat more of protein.
That definitely makes sense. I mean, you play DB, such a critical position on the field. I think to play DB, you have to have somewhat of an active but also a passive mindset, right? Active in terms of next play up, I'm going to go make a play, whatever happens, but then also somewhat of a passive mindset just in terms of, all right, well, Next play is up now. Last play happened, whether it was good or bad. I just got to look at the next thing here. I mean, what is the mental side of the game like for you? How do you constantly prepare to go from one play to the next, even though that last play may not have panned out how you wanted it to?
So I'm always have a mindset like I don't like to talk as much when I'm on the field, but I like my actions speak when I'm on the field. Like if I mess up a play, I always know in my head like, oh, I'm not this type of person. Like I know the next rep I'm gonna like win my next rep. So I always have that mentality like I'm not gonna let this happen again. And even before like I always win reps, I want to consistently just win my reps on one on one. So it's like as a DB, like I'm in man coverage, and I get beat on a slant or like an out route. Like my next play is like I hope they throw it to me next because I'm gonna make a play next time. So I always had that mentality as a DB, and I've been playing DB since I was in high school. I played all over the positions. Like I was a safety. Every time I don't like get to the run fit, I know next play they gonna have me in the box. I'm gonna make the next play in the run fit. And coverage, like if I'm playing quarters, cover three, if I miss my assignment, I know the next play that I'm gonna make that next play. Or like I'm blitzing and then I miss my assignment on a blitz. I know for the next fact that I'm gonna like make this up again when I blitz. So I always had that mindset as a DB, like I'm going to make that next play because I always rely on my gifts that God has gave to me, and I never always like judge my gifts. If somebody's better than me, then I like to compete with them because I always want to compete with the next level type tier guys, and I always can show that mentality that I'm not these one of these like these little boys out here. And since I'm 5'10", like 170 pounds as a DB. I always don't rely on my size. I always rely on my heart as a DB in my mind. As like I always want to make that next play as a DB. So I always just like watch. I always watch like my favorite players growing up, like Jalen Ramsey, Deion Sanders, and it was talk about like how DBs like had that mentality set. So that's always want to do is just have that next play mentality. And all the coaches I grew up with always teach me like you gotta always have that next play mentality. You can't always like let things go in the you can't always like dwell things in the past. All you gotta do is just move on forward. It's just like life. Like you always gotta have that next play mentality as a DB. So that's what I have for my mentality.
So you alluded to some of the versatility there that you had, being able to play different spots, and we'll kind of get into that later. But I'm curious to know, what do you think some of your strengths as a football player are in terms of your traits, the athleticism that you have, how physical you can be out there on the field? I mean, take us inside what you feel like you do really well.
Speed. Like I always relied on my speed. So I ran track a lot in my life. In middle school and high school, didn't even run track in college because my program didn't have a track team. But I always rely on speed. Like I always like pursue to the ball, like catch up with receivers. Just use my speed when I get beat. So I always rely on my speed as my biggest strengths. And now I realize more as I got into like in my career in football. Like I feel like tackling has been more of my strength because like the way I can like pursue to the ball carrier and just make plays. So like that's been one of my strengths as well. It's like I could say tackling and being more physical. So that's kind of like the three things I've described myself in my strengths is elite pursuit, tackling, and speed.
That is some really good stuff there. Do you do like, because I know you said you mentioned that you're kind of getting onto the field now more and more with the weather being better, but are you doing, some sort of tackling drills on the daily, or describe just what that on-field work looks like for you?
I just do a lot of DB drills. So I always bring my ladder, and like when I post it, I always have my ladder with me because I always make sure like DBs have to have good footwork to be elite in the game. So I always do a lot of footwork. I'll start a little like just little footwork drills, and then I bring out cones just to do little W drills and a lot of other DB drills. So when I'm always on the field, I always think about what type of DB drills. I always just go up on Instagram, just look up a lot of DB drills that the guys that post it that's better for me to do in my free time. So every time I'm on the field, I always do a lot of DB drills with the ladders and the cones and like other stuff. So
So as a defensive back, you got a lot of different responsibilities. I mean, sometimes you're helping out in the run game and run support, run defense. Other times you're having to go ahead and basically just straight up guard a guy in the passing game. For you, can you take us inside the different coverages that you've played throughout your throughout your college career, and then how your responsibilities change when it comes to those coverages, like if it's a one high safety versus two high versus a cover two, cover three look?
So since I got to college, I always thought like the difference between high school playbooks and college playbooks is very, very different because college playbooks it's in the middle tier of in the field playbooks. So when I started, getting more playing time as my college career, I had to learn a lot of these playbooks, and I always get a little extra film in with my coaches to understand like what these type of coverage is. So I remember the coverage that we always play when it's like a third down. We will always play like coverage six, and I always play a lot in the field. So as a field corner, I will play a lot of cover two, as the guy will be in the flats a lot, or just being like a trap corner and just like reroute one and just seeing the eyes of two, whatever two does. Or if I'm to the boundary, I play either cover three or cover four, or just modding on the single X receiver. So I had to learn a lot as I got to learn those playbooks, as like you got to do this responsibility, then the other corner responsibility. You know what I mean? Like I explained with the boundary corner, he has to play cover three, cover four, or mod on the receiver, which is like man on defender. And that was my coach will always tell me, like, model defender is you have to have responsibility with that man. If he goes deep, you take him. If he goes under, you let that sink into the linebacker. When I'm on the field side, I will always have my eyes on the threats of the receivers. Like if it's 3 speed, I always have to see 3-2 to the quarterback or whatever in the backfield, and then see my eyes of one, whatever one does. So I always have to ask my coaches and like ask for like extra film, because I love to watch film. I watch film every single day on my computer, on my phone. I will always have film. Huddle will always be on my website, so I will always watch film of my opponents or the practice film of how can I do this type of coverage. So I will always just like text my coaches, call my coaches, like get extra filming of how like to do this type of coverage, so this can help me on Saturdays. So I will also the other biggest one for me that I say was kind of challenging for me that I had to learn was like we're playing quarters, and I seen the Bengals like to play quarters. So I always watch like Lou Unrim, I forgot what his name was, the defensive coordinator, and I'll always watch how the corners will play their coverages. Also the Bears when they play man quarters too. So I always just look at how they like to play man quarters and whatever type of quarters the defense ran. And we like to run switch quarters back in my school. So I will always just like just learn and watch how these quarters like coverages just playing on. So that's really all I got for that.
That is some really good stuff. That the Bears did use a lot of quarters this past season, but I have to dive more into Dennis Allen's defense to figure out how that's going to be changing. So the defense binds together, as one unit. Now, obviously, you're going to have your D-line, your linebackers, your secondary. I mean, in terms of the defensive fronts, right? Do you prefer to play in a defense that's a 3-4, a 4-3, or maybe even a 4-2-5? Like, which of those fronts do you prefer, or does it really not matter to you?
To me, it really doesn't matter because in high school I played a 3-3-5. So we had our edge guys just play whatever side they want. In college, we played the 4-2-5 and a 4-4, 4-4. So it didn't really matter to me. I always trusted my defensive line guys, like they're gonna get the job done to help us DBs and the linebackers in the pass game. So it didn't really matter to me like whatever front we was in, because I played every single formation with the 3-3-5 and the 4-3. So.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So speaking of the different sort of defensive fronts, the big thing to understand there is it's like sometimes you do have a situation where based on the front and the number of linebackers, that impacts how many DBs there are in the secondary, right? Sometimes you're going to have 5, sometimes you may have 4, sometimes you may have 5 or 6, your nickel and dime packages. Sometimes there might even just be 4, depending on what the defense wants to go ahead and do. But then the big thing really is this like corners and safeties, you guys are kind of the last line of defense here. I mean, what is the communication process with your safeties like? How'd you go about building chemistry with them throughout college? And, on those vertical deep shots that offenses are going to take, I mean, what are you doing as a corner, and what do you expect your safety to be doing as well?
Really much of like we will all have film together, and I remember me and my roommates, we will always have film because all my roommates we all play DB, and we will always have film on like what to expect on game days and practice. So we will always just talk about like what this safety needs to do and what us corners need to do. So we will always have that communication. And I was always text our group chat like do y'all want to have some extra film time, because we will always have extra film time at the games to talk to us safeties, like what we need to do better in the communication, what we need to do better in the past presence, because in college we all had that bond. In my DB group, we had a good bond with corners and safeties. Sometimes we did get separated for film time, like with the corners and with the safeties on our own time, but we had that connection that we always have to be good communicators, because our coaches always preached us that we had to be good communicators. If you can't be a good communicator, then you're not going to play on the field. So for us safeties and corners, like when we're playing like a cover 2 or a cover 4 deep zone, like I will always tell that safety like which one you want to do. Like if the formation is like way too far, like if the corner is way too far, then I'll communicate to the safety, hey, let's change up our rules. Like I'll play deep, you play the flats. You know what I'm saying? So we always have that communication, like wherever we see the formation, because the coaches will tell us like you always got to see the formation before you like read your keys. So.
Yeah, that is, reading the keys is such a big thing. You had earlier kind of alluded to the terminology of field corner versus boundary corner. I mean, I am curious to know, right, from your perspective, you also mentioned the term versatility, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you think the versatility that you're going to bring is going to allow you to go ahead and, just excel at the next level?
I just preach to myself as keep going. Like I mentioned before, I am 5'10", 170 pounds. I always like to play versatile. Like every year when I played football, I always change my position. So in these last 4 years, especially in college, I've never changed my position from corner, and I always stayed as a corner. I always wanted to play nickel. I watch a lot of nickels in the league, like Kenny Moore, Kyler Gordon, Teron Johnson. Like I see how versatile they is. So what I want to bring to the table as going on forward to the next level is I kind of want to be moved around, since like my size and how I like to play with, like I like to tackle and I like to cover slots and like outside receivers. So I bring that versatility with my speed and the way my IQ is on the field.
That is some really interesting stuff there. I have to go ahead and ask you this, right? Like, in terms of the role that you're going to play at the next level, right? Do you see yourself, because you mentioned you're a track guy, but then you also mentioned how you played a lot of different positions in the secondary between field to boundary corner, the slot as well. I mean, what role do you see yourself playing for a team at the next level?
It really doesn't matter what I want to play. Like I would love to play nickel, but as a corner, I would love to just to be that guy, just to play whatever. Because in college, they had me shadowing the number 1 receivers when we was playing teams. So I would usually shadow where the receiver goes. Like I remember 2 years ago, I always stayed in the boundary, and I played a lot of boundary. And that was the first game I remember, like a couple of years ago. I always stayed in the boundary. But when I was to the field this past season, I felt kind of comfortable playing in the field, but more than likely that I would love to just play all over the field, like corner, field corner, boundary corner, slot. It doesn't matter to me. I just like to be more versatile as a corner.
That is some really interesting stuff there. I believe you mentioned Kyler Gordon earlier and just studying him. I mean, what about Kyler Gordon sticks out to you in terms of being a guy that you hope to emulate?
Kyler Gordon, when I watched him in college, like he played a lot of sticky coverage. And that's I forgot to mention, that's the biggest strength of me is I like to play man coverage, like sticky coverage. And I see how when Matt Eberflus used to blitz him a lot, like I was always trying to model how he likes to play sticky coverage. So Kyler Gordon has been one of my favorite players, and I am a Bears fan, by the way, since I'm from Chicago, local kid. And I always like to watch a lot of film with Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon. Also, Jalen Johnson is one of my favorite players on the team. And mention with Kyler Gordon, he's more, yeah, like I said, a sticky coverage corner. And the way he plays, like I will always try to emulate like how he likes to play the game when he wants to be sticky, when he wants to tackle, because he's a really good tackler as a corner. So
That, I mean, makes I know that you're a Chicago area guy, so it doesn't make sense for me to ask this question that I usually do, which is, what do you know about the city and stuff? Because I'm sure, you being from the south suburbs, you kind of know all about it. Got a couple more for you here, but, beyond just Kyler Gordon and Jalen Johnson, a couple of the other guys that are currently on the Bears, when teams bring you into the building, what do you think that they're going to be getting from day one as both a person and as a player?
they're gonna get a disciplined person out of me. And I've been disciplined my whole life. Rest in peace to my grandmother. She always will preach me discipline, because in life, if you're not disciplined, you're not gonna get nowhere in life. So I always just remember as the coaches and also my grandmother, they will always preach me discipline. And that's the big thing that I want coaches to see me as. I'm a disciplined player. When you want me in the meeting room by 1:00 and 15 minutes early, then I will definitely be there. So I always just preach myself, you gotta stay disciplined. They gotta stay disciplined as a player, because I know for a fact coaches want to see disciplined players. And as we get further and further with football and stuff, I see how other players want to be preached discipline, and some doesn't other. I just want to see how teams want to view me as a well-rounded athlete that likes to play, that likes to cover, tackle, but does he have that discipline in him? Is he more mature and has that good IQ? So I always want to see teams want to see how disciplined I am. I will always take good notes, have good eye tag, good posture, and just look at the coach in the eye of that I'm ready to play and be disciplined with you guys. So.
I mean, hey, discipline is one of the biggest things you need to be a successful football player, but also a successful person. I know a moment ago you mentioned Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon. You mentioned Jalen Ramsey as well as Deion Sanders. Beyond just those guys, are there any NFL players that you've kind of always looked up to, guys that you tried to maybe study, even guys at other positions like a receiver that you try to study something from their game to anticipate what potential wide receivers that you're going up against might end up doing?
Like I said earlier, I played a lot of positions in my life. So I remember in middle school, I played outside linebacker, defensive end. So one of my favorite players was J.J. Watt. And I always studied how aggressive he was, when he's pressuring the edge and 3 yards in box, just pressuring with that. I also watched a lot of Chris Harris Jr., how small he was, how it doesn't matter how size. Also Tim Jennings, a Chicago Bears legend. Since my height, I will always just look up those guys just to see how they like to play sticky coverage, how they like to get around the ball and stuff. Who else I also grew up watching? I watched a lot of Patrick Peterson from his college days into the NFL days, how he was a tall, lengthy corner, being athletic and strong. Like I said, Jalen Johnson and Jalen Ramsey. And I always like to study receivers, I forgot who it was. Odell was one of my top favorite guys watching. Antonio Brown, just those 2010s, 2020s receivers that in my lifetime that I always watch. So that's all the players that I always like to study their game and see the potential.
I got two more big ones for you here. The first one is this. You played a lot of football, right? Middle school, high school, now in college. I mean, throughout your time playing football, was there a certain memory or set of memories that you had at any level that you feel like is always going to stick with you, no matter what, that you're going to end up telling a lot of people about it when your playing days are eventually over?
So high school, I got a lot of high school memories. And I want to mention that running back from the Buccaneers, Bucky Irving, was my teammate in high school. And I remember one of my biggest plays. I had a 90-yard pick six to get into overtime, to get into halftime. And I always remember just getting that pick six. Nobody was touching me. I just ran full speed. Nobody just looking around. Like I'm just looking at green grass and just going straight to the end zone. And I remember we're playing Lamont. It was a conference game, and I remember I was playing receiver. I was playing receiver at that time, and we had a little like bubble and goal, and I was the goal guy, and Bucky was the bubble guy. So it was a fake bubble, and then I beat the receivers. The receiver had a game time catch for a touchdown. We ended up winning that game with Bucky running the game with a touchdown. And in college, I don't really have that many memories of like big play memories in college, but I do remember is my first start game against Saginaw Valley, where I was making a lot of big hit plays. Like they had me on the cover two blitz, and I remember just feeling like, I'm really playing college football. Like I felt that big hit. It was like a big tackle for a loss for like 3 yards, and I remember just like that was a big hit for me, and I knew to myself that I was ready to play college football. And then my last memory was against Mankato. I had another big hit. And basically on my college career, like I had made a lot of big hits, a lot of pass deflections. So that's really all my moments that I had.
I mean, that is some really good stuff there. Last one for you here, though. When we talked a lot about your football career, how football's kind of changed you, impacted you as a person. But one thing I gotta know is this, and our listeners are so curious to know, what you being a Chicago area guy is, for you, right? What do you like to do when you're not working out, when you're not on the football field? What hobbies, interests do you have away from football?
I play video games a lot, and I like to draw. So a lot of viewers want to know, like, I could just post some of my drawings that I could want to. So I drew a lot of players. Like Devin Hester was also being one of my favorite players growing up. I forgot to mention that. I drew him. I had a sculpture of Matt Forte. It's lying somewhere in my house somewhere. And I also drew a lot of current players. Like I think I remember drew Allen Robinson a couple years ago and Jalen Johnson. So I was always been a big drawer, and I play video games a lot. So right now I was just playing 2K. I just downloaded 2K last night, so I was just playing 2K and Madden. So Madden and like other than that, I really just like to play video games or draw. I just like to be active on the websites and stuff. So.
That is definitely awesome. Before we get you out of here, where can people kind of follow you, keep up with your work? Where can they follow you in the world of social media?
Instagram, Twitter. That's really what I'll be on, is Instagram and Twitter. So they could keep following me, keep knowing how my day's been going every day. So I usually don't tweet that much. Power off. Sorry about my speaker, but I really be on Twitter, but I really don't like tweet that much. But I always be on Instagram a lot, so they could keep following me up on Instagram.
This has been awesome. Keep in touch. Best of luck to you. Hoping for some really good news for you in just a short amount of time here. And, we'll have to have you on again at some point in the future. Thanks so much, Jamon.
Appreciate it, man. Thank y'all for having me.